Hello, everybody. Welcome. My name's Sharon McCune. I am the associate producer at Picked Classic Theater and the curator of the Expand the Canon series. And before we get going, I would like to read our land acknowledgement. I asked for a moment to acknowledge the traditional lands of those who came before and celebrate those who are here today in what is known in the present day as the Greater Pittsburgh region. The Erie, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy made up of the Mohawk, Oneida, Onondaga, Seneca, Tuscarora, and Cayuga, Kaskaskia, Lenape, Massawomek, Mississauga, Osage, Shawanokie, Shawnee, Susquehannock, Wyandot, Yuchi, and the pre-European contact cultures of the Adena, Hopewell, and Monongahela. Thank you. As you'll notice, I am not Alan Stanford. Alan Stanford is in rehearsal for our first staged reading in the Expand the Canon series. The Expand the Canon series was an idea borrowed from, inspired by Hedge Pig Ensemble Theater in Brooklyn, New York. And it's to expand not only what our idea of classical theater is, but what informs, what tells us what is a classic story. And Alan has decided to define it as a story for their time and for all time. So I would like to announce our first reading in the Expand the Canon series for our 25th anniversary season is James DeVita's An Improbable Fiction. And I am joined this afternoon by the director, Miss Robin Walsh, and by the playwright, Mr. James DeVita. So if you would allow me a moment to give me time to do an introduction for these two lovely people who will be joining us for the next hour. Robin Walsh, our director, has appeared on regional stages from Vermont to California, playing everything from a dog in the comedy Sylvia to the title role in Hamlet. She's a recipient of the Harry Schwalbe Excellence in Arts Award, as well as a Pittsburgh Foundation Creative Achievement Award. For Picked Classic Theater, she played the title role in Hedda Gabler and Regan in King Lear. She is currently a professor in the Conservatory of Performing Arts at Point Park University here in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Robin has written several short plays for the Swan Festival and for the Bricolage Bus Festival. She directed the premiere of Mad Honey for Unseamed Shakespeare and La Ronde for La Rep. She's delighted to be directing, and we're glad to have her in the inaugural staged reading in the Expand the Canon series. Our playwright, Mr. Jim DeVita, is a native of Long Island and has just completed his 27th season as an actor and director with American Players Theater in Spring Green, Wisconsin, my hometown. Jim is a recipient of the National Endowment of Arts Literature Fellowship for Fiction and a member of Actors Equity and the Dramatists Guild. As an actor, Jim has worked in Japan, Germany, Australia, Ireland, and around the United States, and also as a fisherman on Long Island for 5 seasons. Along with his novels and adult plays, Jim has also worked extensively as a playwright for young audiences. His work in the field has been acknowledged with the Distinguished Play Award from the American Alliance of Theater and Education, the Intellectual Freedom Award by the Kentucky Council of Teachers in English, the Intellectual Freedom Award by the Kentucky Council of Teachers of English and Language Arts, the Schubert Fendrick Memorial Playwriting Contest, and the American Alliance of Theater and Education honored his body of work with the Charlotte B. Chorpenning Award. I am thrilled to welcome Ms. Robin Walsh and Mr. Jim DeVita. Hi.
Hi, everybody.
Hey.
Thank you for having me here.
Thanks for joining me. Hi, welcome. So I'm going to start with you, Jim, if you wouldn't mind.
Sure.
Describe your life as a fisherman on Long Island for 5 seasons. How old were you? Why did you? Is that just a thing that everybody does on Long Island?
No, that's all I ever wanted to do. I keep feeling I'm just writing something this morning saying I still feel like I'm just a fisherman passing myself off as an actor for 27 years and a writer. But no, I grew up on Long Island, so I grew up like 15 minutes from the ocean. So I grew up on the beach and the shore, and I fished since I was a kid, and that's all I really wanted to do. So I worked mostly on open and charter boats, and we did some commercial fishing also. But my longest career was I was a first mate on an open boat. which is, the boats where we got to hawk customers from the bow and say, morning, how you doing? 5 o'clock, we're going out here. And we take people out fishing, and I basically made my living filleting fish, whereas I made my real money. But I did that from 18 to 3 years full-time, then 2 seasons part-time. And that's when I started to get the itch to just do something else. Wasn't quite sure what it was.
Okay.
And thank goodness for community colleges, which I champion every time I can. Yay. Teachers in community colleges, they changed my life. And that's where I first started to get interested in theater. Was in a community college. That sounds.
Did you ever time what was your fastest time gutting a fish?
Oh, there's not many things I would ever dare say I'm good at. Mm-hmm. in this subjective business that I've been in for most of my life, but I could fillet fish. I was a good filleter. I could fillet a flounder in a couple of seconds. So
that's impressive.
Not anymore, probably.
And how I'm trying to think of the how sharp your equipment would have to be in order for that to happen.
Mm-hmm. Well,
yikes.
Yeah, you sharpen them between just about every fish. I used it.
Right.
My Dexter, which was the name of the knives back there, Dexters, and so you have your sharpening stone right on the table, and it was kind of like a show too, because everybody would come around and watch. It would be like a circle, and you'd flip the guts over here, and the clean fillets over there, and the birds would come down, and
lots of ooh-ah.
Yeah, it was a fun way to make a living when you're young. It's a young man's game working on a boat.
I love it.
Yeah.
Robin, how about you?
How about me?
Do you remember like what your did you ever want to do anything else besides write or act or direct?
No.
Well, that was easy. Okay, good. What was the first show you did?
The first show I did?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think I was in elementary school, and we did the three, something about trolls going over a bridge or something like that. And then, actually, I did a production of Waiting for Godot at a summer camp my mom signed me up for when I was about 15. And I remember saying everything's dead but the tree. We had a big cardboard tree and it fell over during the middle of the production. It was great.
I love it.
Well, yes.
And it stuck with you. Yes. How much, see that Billy Goat's Gruff, Waiting for Godot. Perfect. Both classic stories. Sorry, terrible. I apologize. This question is for both of you, because you said, Jim, so community college is where you discovered. Who was your teacher and what was it that did it for you? Do you remember?
I do. I was so fortunate. I went to school, I went back to school when I had dropped out twice. I tried community college twice before that and dropped out both times because I thought I was going to be a captain. Mm-hmm. And I'm terrible at math. To this day, it's embarrassing, and I'm not being hyperbolic. So I went to school because I thought I want to get my math skills up for the Coast Guard license, which there's navigation skills, there's celestial navigation, and there wasn't everything that you just punch a button, back then. And I'm sure today you still have to know how to do that.
Right.
If you lose all those electronics. And I was just so mortified in class. I was 18, 19, and I kept on dropping out. And I went back to the fishing boats, but I still wasn't happy. I loved the ocean, but there was something else. And so my captain said, "Why don't you try community college again? Like, is there anything else that interests you?" And the only thing that I could think that interested me was, it's going to sound silly, but I was an old movie buff. I watched Gene Kelly and Fred Astaire and Jimmy Cagney. Since I was a little boy, I would get up in the middle of the night, set my alarm, and watch old movies. And so this is when I was 21, and there's something to do with movies. And so I looked at community college, and they had a theater studies program, and that's the closest thing. They didn't have any film at this particular college. So I signed up for a theater studies program, and that's when I saw my first play. And and I was blessed, I was saying, because I was a little older, so I was hungry, and I wasn't very smart, but I think I had capability to be smart, and I was really hungry. And these two teachers took me on like a project. And I had my one teacher, Harriet Novick, who is still my friend. She's in her 80s and retired, of course. And Richard Johnson. So Richard was from Texas, and he was all about clarity and precision, James, and language. And he would just stay and run my ass about. Excuse me, no, I can say that. But he was a wonderful teacher and just very. And Harriet was all about guts and authenticity, and she didn't, so I had one person that was having technique, and the other person wanted me authentic and real, which is to me is the marriage in classical theater. I think that's the chase I've been after for 30 years. Is how do we marry the kind of skills it takes to do heightened language, and yet have a feeling of immediacy in the moment, and real human being talking, and not the sound of Shakespeare, as we call it.
Right.
So I was just so lucky to get these two teachers in their prime, and they took me on like a project. They took me to New York. They took me to shows. I'm from Long Island. I'd never go into New York and saw shows, and they took me in to see all theater that I had never seen before. They took me to the Metropolitan Opera. They took me to museums. So I was just so blessed to run across these two people at that point in my life.
Right.
And the big thing that changed my life was they took me in to see a show. It's this one-man Shakespeare show. And I didn't like Shakespeare at all because it always made me feel dumb. I thought, it's for the smart people. And so it scared me. I remember having to read it in high school and it just felt terrible. I was mortified. And so I had no interest in it. And here I am. They took me in to see this one-person show about Shakespeare. And it kind of changed my life because I was understanding all this Shakespeare stuff, which I thought was not for me. It's like for those other people across the aisle that were all dressed up really nice, and I was in my flannel shirt and jeans, and I just had this, and I was suddenly got enthralled by this language, which sounded like it was like magic. Like, how does this guy do this? It's like and I didn't know who it was at the time, but it was Sir Ian McKellen, who had a one-man show called Acting Shakespeare in the mid and late 80s. And that kind of changed my life. After that show, I said I wanted to do Shakespeare. I want to learn how to do classical work, whatever classical means, but I wanted to learn how to do Shakespeare.
Right.
And and then those two teachers, actually, I had a very, very thick New York accent, and there's nothing wrong with accents, but they said, probably if you want to do any kind of classical work or Shakespeare, you probably need to go to a voice school. And that's how they helped me get a school at one of the strongest schools for speech at that time, and was in Milwaukee. And that's how I wound up in Wisconsin. So those teachers changed my life, and I still see them to this day. They see all my shows and give me notes, whether I want them or not. And so
it's fantastic.
Yeah, I was very, very lucky.
Robin, how about you? What teacher had the greatest effect on your life?
Well, actually, it was a teacher in 5th grade in a negative way. I was an extremely, it kind of got me started speaking. It's got me started, I think, acting. I was an extremely shy child. My mother was deaf growing up, but she read lips. And I often would not speak, or I would not speak with a voice. And I was bullied by my 5th grade teacher, and I had a lot of trouble fitting in. And I had a great deal of trouble asserting myself. And, she would hold my papers up because I would draw pictures on the papers on the margins of the flowers. And she would hold them up and say, "This is not correct, D paper," as opposed to the one that's always typed. And I was always doing something too creative, and she didn't like it. And I couldn't seem to I couldn't speak. And one day she wanted someone to read something. And I heard this voice inside me that said, "This is mine." And shot up into the air of its own volition. And she looked at me like, "Are you kidding me?" And she just was like, "Fine, Robin, read it." And this voice came out of me and filled that room. And I nailed it. And I thought, this is mine. This is what I do. When the words come from someone else and they're on the page, I could find a voice. I could find my way through and out of the silence into the world.
That's a great story.
It's a great story.
Yeah.
How long have I known you and I didn't know that story? What's that? Oh my gosh. See, and that's like complete. Oh, goodness gracious me. All right. Well, since you're both writers, I'm going to move into my next question. How did whoever wants to go first is fine. How did you find your way into writing as an outlet? Was it before? Like, did you dawdle in it before acting, or as you were going through college? And
well, I'll go, Robin. But I was kind of first thing I ever wanted to be was a writer in sixth grade. I remember that. I loved book reports, and so I remember I used to make I would make covers for the book reports out of construction paper and like use yarn, and you know, a lot of people do like, you know, a paragraph on loose leaf, and I made books out of them. So I remember wanting to be a writer in sixth grade, and that's the last time I can remember wanting to be a writer until I was 30. But I always wrote. I always kept. I don't even call them journals back then. I just I used to. It wasn't, you know. I had an old. I remember it was like a record keeping book with all these lines in it, like crosshatched. But I used to write in that. So I always used to write. And then when I got, even on the fishing boats, I used to keep a log. It was very dramatic though, because my log I would end it with "so ends this day." So I guess there was something dramatic in me. But I was very into Melville as a kid. I read Moby Dick, and when I was young, and I went up to Mystic Seaport, and I used to go to the whaling museums, and I used to read the old logs of the captains, which was kind of in heightened language. And I read that somewhere, some captain ended his log with "so ends this day." So when I was fishing for flounder, I did the same thing, you know. But I always kind of wanted to write, and then, but I was way far too embarrassed. I never showed anybody anything, and the very first time I ever showed anybody anything, I was graduating college as an actor, and somebody said, I forget where, that somebody said an actor should always have a one-person show. You know, when you're out of work, you could take it to a library, a school, you can make, you know, help pay your rent. And I couldn't afford royalties, so I remember I went back and I looked at some of my journals and stuff, and I started to find a few pieces that could maybe be something. And so I wrote a one-person show just for me to be able to do out of school, because I wasn't getting a lot of work. And I eventually got a theater to produce it, and it was called Waiting for Vern, Robin, which was a take on Waiting for Godot. And the gist of it is an actor comes to a theater to do a two-person, like a reading of a new two-person show, and the other actor doesn't show up. And that's the conceit for the night. And then the actor has to fill time. But yeah, so I really didn't show anybody anything I wrote until I was about 30. And maybe I was too, because I think, I'll speak for myself, but you know, that having not trained as a writer or gone to school, there's a lot of noise in my head about who am I to write. I can't write. Nobody's gonna, you know, I've got 3 novels now, and it's still like, who would want to read something? I'm not trained as a writer. All this noise with Anne Lamott calls them the screaming monkeys in your head. So a lot of my work in that early is just like quieting that noise and just saying, just write. And so I've been very fortunate to be able to have some avenues too, that I've got my work done in too. So, but yes, I always wanted to, but never really showed anybody until I was 30. How about you, Robin?
Robin?
I'm still a dabbler, you know. I've had some short plays put on, but it's always something I've enjoyed, and I love it. And I keep thinking, oh, someday I'll do more of it, like when I retire, you know, and I have more time. I have several novels finished sitting around, and I have a full-length play that it's funny, when I read your after notes from Improbable Fiction about how you needed something to do during the pandemic, I did Lady Macbeth and Hamlet back to back, also teaching 5 classes and running a graduate program simultaneously.
Oh my gosh.
When it was done, I was just like, I need something light. And I wrote a farce. I wrote a farce about actors in an acting company where everything goes wrong. And no one's ever done it, but it did me a world of good. You know, it was just so much fun to write. So I find writing fun. And then I try to write mystery novels because I love to read them. And you know, it's they're sitting around my house right now.
You never know.
Yes, it amuses me, and it keeps me busy and, you know, creatively alive, I guess.
Yeah.
So, Awesome. So thank you for the segue, Robin. I appreciate that. So segue into lockdown. So take us through, since Robin just took us through her lockdown nightmare.
Yeah.
So Improbable Fiction was born out of?
Yeah, it was. Well, I was doing a show. I was playing I was doing a Murder on the Orient Express down in Florida, the Oslo. I was doing Poirot, and I closed. I think it was mid-February or something. Just when we were things were starting to, at least for me, something's really going on with this COVID thing, and got home around. And when I got home, I forget when the date was. It's just when we really knew things were shutting down. It's like, wow, this is real. And it was about a month of sitting around. Then we realized that, we remember when we all, at first, we didn't know what. Okay, we're probably going to have a shorter season next year. Right. We do 9 shows a year. Maybe we'll only do, maybe we'll do 7 or this. Maybe we'll start a little later. And every day was more and more. And then it finally hit, we're not having a season. First time not working for me in over probably 32 years as an actor as a whole. It's it was kind of mind-boggling. And but we all had that experience in whatever way it affected us. But and I generally write every day. I've always written, and here was a perfect opportunity to write. I'm unemployed. I have nothing to do. There's so much going on in the world, not just the pandemic. The world is on fire and crying out for social justice as it should be doing and was doing, and it was all this stuff. And I said, but I had no desire to write about anything, and I was, probably depressed too, and I felt lazy, and it was not I'm not a lazy person. I pride myself on that, and anyway, so we were sitting at, my wife was like, well, why aren't you doing anything? You should write something, right? And I don't know if you saw, there were all these posts about people talking about, well, Shakespeare during the pandemic wrote King Lear. And it's and I was like, shut up. Right. Now I feel lazy. I just found out I'm unemployed. My friends are unemployed. I had friends that could not eat. We were getting food for people. It's so I was like, that did not make me feel any better. Right. And I was being kind of petty and mean about it, and saying, I said, I should write a play about actors being out of work, like we are. And then God, I don't know how it happened. I said, or Shakespeare being out of work, or his characters being out of work. Yeah, the Boar's Head Tavern, and there's nobody in there but Falstaff, and then I started this kind of idea. It just kind of fell out of that, and it wasn't a fully fleshed idea, but and the idea, I just kept on seeing Falstaff alone in a bar. And that's so not Falstaff, he's always surrounded by his cronies, and then the idea, as I dreamt on a little bit more, what would it be like for a man because we were all going through that too, right? Not being able to see our friends and family. So for me, at least, a lot of the play was informed, or at least inspired by a lot what was going on in the world at that time. And of course, I was channeling it through a whole different, context, but. So I kept on thinking about that, and so not knowing where the play would go, I just started with Falstaff alone in a bar and Mr. Scrickly cleaning the bar behind him, and that's all I had. And then I started going with that, as I tend to do when I write. I really don't know where it's going to go. And then I waited to see who would walk in the door of the bar. It's true. It was funny because a couple of people have asked me, so when did you choose, that you wanted this character and that character? And I'll be very honest with you. Of course, something is choosing. I'm not trying to be, woo-woo about it, but my imagination chooses. I got a lot of stuff in my imagination. And the first person that came through the door was a messenger, as often happens in Shakespeare plays. Right, right. And I thought he was just going to give a message and leave, and he didn't leave. And then the play kept on going. And then I started to get the idea that people were going to come into the bar, and I was excited to see who would come in next. And so it kind of got born a little bit out of accident. And then I wrote really quickly, 15 pages or something, and I read it out loud to my wife in the kitchen one morning, and she said, maybe something in that. So that gave me a little more inspiration. I started writing. and finished a really, really rough draft. And that was, as you know, all of us theaters were looking for some kind of online content to keep in touch with our audiences. And the theater was looking for a way to employ us to help with health insurance.
Right.
So wound up, we got one of the Zoom readings that a lot of us did at that time in those early months. And so we started with a Zoom reading of it. It was a much different play than it is now, but it was really valuable because I got to develop it with professional actors, and we brought up director Tim O'Sell. I don't know if you know Tim, a wonderful director. So that was really nice because, like, I had almost like a 2.5 or 3 week workshop. I was so grateful that the theater, paid to bring somebody in and all those actors to be there to workshop this. And so it was born out of that. And then we had that first iteration, and after that, the director Tim O'Sell, and some of the actors that were in the play gave me feedback on their parts. And we over the summer, we kept on working on it. And then I was very fortunate that we got to open the first year back. This summer was the show that opened our outdoor theater, was that play, Improbable Fiction. It's a very truncated version of how it happened. But yeah, so it was fun. And like you say, Robin, too, I wanted to write a comedy. Even if it's an ironic, dark humored comedy at times. And it turned into be more than that. But it's a comedy at heart, and I want it to be that. I want it to be, even with some of the more, takes some serious turns we dip into. I talk about that at in some of those notes where it was much more pretty much surface, which wasn't a bad thing in the first iteration, but the world changed so much from that March until over that next summer, everything that happened in the world. And so I did get a little more social context, I thought, in the second draft, that we could touch on to keep it grounded. And I love crazy humor, but I love it still grounded in a kind of reality, even in this improbable world that I created. I tried, I'm not sure how successful I am, but that's what I try to go for, is a real sense of truth. And then you could bounce off the walls with it as long as it's truthful,
Yes, I think you are very successful with that. Sharon and I, in the callbacks, the Othello monologue was just killing us and the actors, and things that we didn't read. Again, a lot of it towards the end is just some beautiful, beautiful things.
Thank you.
Along in the mania, which I love.
Yeah. That speech is very much speaking to the context of our world today. We're doing it in that language, and also from Othello's point of view, as a character in that play, because it's tricky because you can check the boxes for social context in plays, but if it sounds like that's what you're doing, then I've failed as a playwright. If you hear what I'm trying to say, and I've seen plays like that, and I've been guilty of it myself too, but you don't want to hear, he's bringing that thing up because so I tried to have all those things, and even Juliet's, her fight against the patriarch and agency in her life, and even Falstaff with his weight and that shaming of him, and things that I wanted to address as the characters, and try to have them as human beings voice these, their feelings on that. So that was fun. That always keeps me in a like I say, you can go crazy with it too. You can do some very zany stuff in there, just that we keep it grounded in these people's lives. That makes sense? Or?
Yes. Well, and here's the thing. One of the I was talking to you briefly about this a couple of days ago, Jim. One of the reasons I chose this play, Pict is known for Shakespeare. So I thought, well, what better way to come back to classical, right, back to live theater, than using one of the classics, right, Shakespeare, but ever so slightly different. People will go, oh, well, that's that. Wait, does he say that? Did he say that in his play? Right, which is, I spent 10 minutes, at least 10 minutes, when I first read it going, oh, who said that? What plays that? Right, and I told Robin the same thing. I said, at some point, you're going to have to stop asking yourself that, or you'll drive yourself crazy, because then it doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah.
Right. Which is why it's so beautifully crafted, and it's not me just blowing smoke. but so it's Shakespeare. Yes, I love Shakespeare. It is, if we can't identify with people sitting in a bar during a plague, then we can't. But for me, it's also hopeful, which we needed. And how far are we into this pandemic? That's really not going anywhere.
Yeah.
You know, just in our country alone, I believe we have now surpassed 750,000 people who have died. And what I also loved about it, not gonna lie, as soon as I got hired to do this position, you're one of the first people I thought of, because I admitted I steal things from other theaters, and what better theater to steal from than my hometown? So I went, what is an improbable fiction? What is this new play Jim has written? So I was like, and then I sent you an email going, hey Jim, how do I get a hold of your play? And you said, do you want it? Yeah. So to me, it was everything that you have been talking about, right? It is grounded in so many social things that have happened since lockdown. But it is rooted in all these lovely words that we keep doing for how many hundreds of years. Sorry, I'm going to get verklempt because I can't express how dorked I am. It's watching these characters that we love and feel like we know, that then find another aspect of themselves, which is not, and I know that in your notes you bring about friendship, and to me it's not just friendship, it's finding within themselves, outside of what they were written, right, that just takes them to another, and especially with strong female characters. Right, so as a person who identifies as female, we could all use a few more of those. Right, and it's also, we had also touched on this as well, it can't be easy being a white man, taking the words of another dead white man, and crafting something that brings such hope, that has such beautiful, rich characters outside of what we are familiar with, in a whole new world that we are living in. So thank you for that. That's one of the reasons why I chose, many of the reasons why, and why it fits in the first slot of this Expand the Canon series.
No, thank you. I'm so glad that you got that. One of the things we set out to do, and this is probably came from direct conversations with the actors too. And you're right. I mean, of course, I'm trying to figure out what my place as an older white man in classical theater. You know, what my place is now, if there is a place. And there's a part of me, you know, there's part of that brain that says, it's time to just go away and make room. There's another part that many of my friends and people of color say, well, no, it's about, another option, facilitating the new people coming in. How can I be of, service to that? Can I help that? Trying to be honest, or, I'm still trying to find out where I belong. And if I do, but particularly this play, writing Juliet and writing Cleopatra and writing Othello, writing a black man's point of view. I was like, in my first draft, I was very, I didn't know if I wanted to do that. I didn't want to even do a Zoom. When the first thing they wanted to do a Zoom reading this, I said, no, I don't want to any of this. But my point being, I'm very blessed that I have the people that worked on that play, my Juliet and my Cleopatra and my Othello, were wonderfully gracious, and they've been my coaches in as this world has changed and I've changed and learned. And we talked about the play, we talked about the characters, and we talked about that thing you said. We said we wanted to find another aspect to Othello. Like, what's the thing with Othello that we don't know about him? And I was still nervous to write that. And so again, a white man writing from a black man's point of view. But I talked to my friends, my friends of color, and we talked about the role, and we talked about some things, and basically, I wanted my colleagues to help vet this for me, to check my lens. That, you know, and as much as I'm trying and learning, I know there's a lens I still that I see through. So I can't see the things. I know I can't know those things. So I was blessed with colleagues that trusted me to write that and dared me to write more. They're my friend Gavin Lawrence, who's my brother. We did Blood Knot together. He's one that really dared me to write more of Othello, because I kind of touched on it in the first thing. I kind of, you know, and I didn't have that big speech that he has now, where sorry is not enough, you know. And I had a friend of mine say those words to me. You know, I've used it in the context of this, you know, and everything that's going on in the world, and I'm trying to understand. And my friend saying it's not enough to be sorry. What, you know? And so I put that into the play, and I was pushed and dared in a loving, ruthless way by my friends of color, and also some of the gender issues that I deal with in the play. Also pushed by my colleagues, my female colleagues. And by that I mean it took that kind of it's scary conversations, you know, even with people that love me, sitting down and talking about, and I want to credit them, because credit Gavin and credit Melissa Pereira was my Juliet. Because I know those conversations are not easy with someone that I know they love me. So to be able to talk into that and have a sit down with me and say, I really think you're missing the boat here. I think we need more of this here. Or you're doing a lot of this for Juliet, but where's this part of her? Or so I just kind of want to acknowledge that the kind of collaboration that went into this, and I wouldn't say failing. Yeah, well, failing. That's. I don't think failing is negative. You know, failing at a speech and going back at it and rewriting it, and so I feel good. I feel confident about the gender and race issues I bring up in the play, because I had partners right next to me throughout the whole thing that I trust, coaching me. To be honest with you, yeah, they're my coaches. Right. And so one option is for me to run away and don't try, and I can't do that. Let me just get out of here, and or to try and learn how I can still be of use and still be creative. And does that make sense? You know, it's happening right now.
Right. Still new.
Yeah. Yeah. And we've never done this before. So
right.
Yeah.
Lots of people haven't done this before.
Yeah.
So, but I think the fact that asking is right, the largest and yet the smallest step.
Yeah.
Asking for help. I need help. Guide me.
And those conversations, I think, and for me at least, it was the fear of the conversation more than the conversation. Like once we got into it, you know, whatever the conversation was, what it was, all my fear going up. I'm going to say the wrong thing. I'm going to do this. I wrote something that's going to offend. But once we got into actually looking at the words or having this difficult conversation, the other side of it was always so much better, and I learned so much. And the thing about those things, I think for me, at least when you learn them, you can never, ever forget them again.
Right. So
I think those mistakes that I've made as a director or as a writer, once they're pointed out to me and I learn by that, I never don't see them again. So it's a slow kind of gathering of kind of an education for me, I think.
But I think you also have to be open to learning.
Yeah, it can. Yeah, you can't just
people who are like, no, I'm just going to write what I'm going to write, or yes, I'll take into account what you want, what you think should be here, and then again. Yeah,
it can be just a buzz. Collaboration, as everybody says, collaboration. You know,
right?
True collaboration is complicated. It takes longer. It can get messy, and I think it's so worth it. Because if you could really do that and you get through that mess, you get there's jewels in there for everybody. So
right,
yeah.
Robin, if you don't mind my asking, what leapt out at you the first time you read it, after you said yes?
Well, like you, at first I was really intimidated, I think, because I knew I was directing it, and I was like, oh my God, I've got to figure out what play every line is from. I've got to read all of these plays with a fine-tooth comb, and I was driving myself a little crazy and missing the whole point of it. And then I relaxed a little bit and just started reading it for what was there. And what jumps out about it to me is, I mean, what I love about Shakespeare is that it's a capturing of humanity that is still there, that transcends the era. And what I love about it is the larger than life characters, which we still have. And the thing that hits me is how they become relativized, how everybody comes in with their angst in the beginning of, oh my God, ah! And then something real happens in a different area, in a different leveling way that kind of strips away the histrionics for a moment and makes space for people to see each other and to reveal their heart on a deeper level. Which to me brings the characters closer and brings a deeper sense of hope and coming together as community, which I think was so lovely and part of the positivity of the piece for me. So in addition to being this fun, lively, Keystone Cops is so wrong, of course, for the style, but it's just that sort of manic energy of this is going on and that's going on, and this character is so worried about this, and so it's so fun to be that dramatic, you know what I mean? and getting to just lay it out there about this, and then these other issues pop to the surface for a moment, and the bubble pops, and it's stripped away. And we let it drop, and we come together as real people for a second, and then the circus starts. You know? And then at the end, I think there are those moments where it's like, what matters, and we see each other, and there's beauty, and there's a sense of hand holding, whether you're touching or not, and of heart opening, and of opening to the real beauty and the laughter and the love and the meaning available to all of us.
Right.
Now, then, today, in a pandemic, out of the pandemic, in the play, out of the play.
Right. Yeah. Well spoken.
That's lovely.
Well, you gave it to me, James.
Oh, thank you. I got to remember that.
We'll rewind the tape and play it back for you. I have to tell you, we just finished with auditions and callbacks.
Oh yeah.
A few days ago, and tell me if I'm wrong, Robin. I don't think I am. The absolute glee with which that actors were like, so tell me if I'm wrong about this, but is there da, 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 and we're like, right? But like or they would notice, right, a certain line going, oh, that was a good choice right there, right? Like slipping that one in, right. But the actors that we had read Othello, that particular monologue, like they were so immediately, and of course it might seem obvious to actors or Black folks or African, however you identify, African American, anybody of color, saying those particular words immediately grounds you. So there is no pretense. It's absolutely, yes, you happen to be Othello, but you're a Black man. Or you're a Black person of color. And that's all that really matters. And as soon as the actors were done, I'd say, you got a new monologue right there. And they were like, what? And I'm like, you have a new monologue. You can't say that it's not Othello because it is, right? Even though it's right. because there's some, so now that I know where that line came from, right, Gavin, thank you. It's like what Othello would have said, right? Which makes perfect sense, which just encapsulates everything about just that one extra cherry on top that encapsulates everything about Othello's character in that one monologue. That's it. That's all you need. And even in just those few lines.
Yeah.
It's all right there. And that's just, yeah, that's how, how you wove all of that is mind-boggling to me still.
Well, that's like what Robin was saying. There's like, what was so kind of joyful, because if you're a geek, you could have a ball with this. There's Easter eggs all over the place, but you don't need to. That's the thing we went to, because the first few, when we were having like previews, I was watching to make sure that it wasn't just theater people laughing, because if that happens, I failed. We will find an extra joy in it, obviously, because we've been around it all our lives, but it has to work on just the story itself.
Right.
And again, but an audience, they may want to do the same thing, like, where's that from? And hopefully that will go away, because it doesn't matter where anything is from. And the characters don't know they're quoting other plays. They're just expressing the moment with these words.
Right.
And what was fun for me was whatever moment I found I wanted to express, there was something in Shakespeare about that. And I'm lucky because I'm working a Shakespeare company, so I've been around his work for 30 years. So a lot of it was, it wasn't like, oh, I knew her, but I would remember something. There was something in King Lear about justice or something. So I would literally, search in online script of Lear for the word justice, and then I would find where it was, the context. And then much of it is verbatim, just in different contexts.
Right.
Or like Othello's speech started with an actual speech. Her father loved me, oft invited me, which is actually from the play. And then I just crafted and adapted from there.
Yeah.
But it was really fun to build in that way too. And not to be too clever too, so I tried to stay away from the obvious, things, that we're not seeing quotes that we can do with each other. Right. You don't want the audience going, oh, So, and I had a few of those at first too, and you kill your darlings after a while. It's like, that's too cute.
Right.
But it was a lot of fun. It was fun trying to weave the as you say, there's a manic energy to it, a real fun comedic energy to a lot of it. But you're right, Robin, you put it so well. Part of it is the other things sit in relief to that. And that's why I love comedy, because we can take you here with that, and then I can take your legs out from the side just for a little moment. Right. Remember where we are, and then something else crazy happens, and then we go. Right. Yeah.
It's funny you bring up the right, just to make sure that not only actors get it, but everybody gets it. So that was one of the concerns of doing this as a reading, and I'm like, nope, they're not going to care. I'm going to tell you, after like 5 minutes or 10 minutes, they'll be like, nope, doesn't matter anymore. Don't care. Yeah. And it did. Left.
Yeah, that's it. And we found that happen here too. I wasn't sure, because it's a new play. It's like, is this going to work? Right. Yeah, comedy is like, is anybody going to laugh at this? And also it had a double kind of meaning to it. This was for a lot of people, the first show they were seeing back since COVID hit. Right. And we were down to 25% houses at that time when we opened this. So a 25% house in a 1,000-seat outdoor theater, masked, everybody spread out. Right. And which is, it's hard to get comedy when everybody's spread out like that. It's a different energy, of course. But still, it was lovely for them to, and these are people that like Shakespeare too, in my theater at least. They're used to seeing their Shakespeare, and they hadn't for 2 years. So it was really kind of I don't like that phrase of Valentine to the audience, but it was a bit for our audience too, to see the double meta thing that happened for our audience was the Othello, the man that played Othello, Chike Johnson, played Othello at our theater. So the characters in the play. The Juliet was the Juliet. The Juliet also played Cordelia. So there's one moment when Falstaff sings for Cordelia. So she's Melissa Pedetta, who was Juliet, and they played Cordelia. Falstaff is Brian Monty, who played Falstaff. Looking, because I couldn't even think it after a while. Getting into things, I stopped thinking about it.
That's awesome.
It was fun. It was a fun, you know, things.
Yay. That's so I should do a plug because I can't help it. So AmericanPlayersTheater.org. That is, I blame Randall Duck Kim, Charles Bright, and Ann Okio Grosso. It's their fault I'm an actor because they moved in and started a theater on the top of a hill in a natural bowl, and the rest, as they say, is history. And as I like to tell, I'm teaching a Shakespeare class now at Point Park, and I now have 2 Tamaras in my class. And I love telling people, I said, so the first season was A Midsummer Night's Dream and Titus Andronicus. Now, if that's not 2 opposite ends of the spectrum, right?
I know.
And Randy Kim, who is this just powerhouse of a diminutive person, played Puck, and then latexed himself up and played Titus. And so, right, I was 10. So that was one of those things I was like, I don't want to do that. That looks like fun. So that was my introduction to theater, even though I think I did my first play when I was in 3rd grade, and it was like The Mouse Who Didn't Believe in Santa Claus. I was that mouse. The mouse's name was Squeak Nibble. Yeah. But that's my plug. Go to AmericanPlayersTheater.org. You can see where I grew up, because it's you know what, Jim, you tell people about APT, because it's my hometown. That's where I grew up, but you're there.
It was, you know, I got here. Randy was gone by the time I started working here. It was under the artistic leadership of David Frank, and when I started, and it's this kind of improbable theater that is it's a 10-minute walk up a hill. And if it's your first time, you're probably wondering, what? It's like, and then it opens up through the trees into this, and there's this natural bowl, you know, on the side of a hill where the theater was built, kind of Greek amphitheater style-ish. And it's just this beautiful place in the middle of the woods. And I've been so blessed to work there. It's a 1,000-seat outdoor house. We don't use mics. We never have. And we're adamant that we won't. We'll probably retire if that happens, but we don't do that. And we're not just being, we don't do that. No, because we really think there's something lost as soon as you put something between it. You know, mics are fine, but it's just we don't do that. And there's a certain sound we feel that is lost if you do that. And what it takes a lot of work, though. It takes actors that are trained. Right. And we have voice and speech teachers on. That's a big thing. Voice and text coaches on every show. And we have had. They're part of and they're not people in the corner. They're on the front table. So trying to keep that language alive, and the rhetorical skills needed to do some of that language. And so that's a big part of trying to pass that on for people that are interested in it. It's not everybody's. It doesn't mean anybody's better or worse if you do it or don't do it. We happen to like this. We like to keep it alive.
Yeah.
And it takes certain skills to do that, to fill a 1,000-seat house when there's a little breeze in the trees without sounding like you're yelling.
Right.
And also staying authentic, but making big choices.
Right.
Because we can all be very realistic and get it out to the front row, but to 40 rows back in an outdoor theater. And also be authentic, and so that's a great challenge. And it's not like you just know how to get it. Right. I still struggle it for 27 seasons, you know, because it's different all the time. So, and we do have an indoor theater now too. You know, I have a 200-seat black box called the Touchstone,
right,
which is quite wonderful. And as we get older, we all want to work in the Touchstone
because it's warmer. There's
Okay.
there's something to me too about that was always my right, and that's actually one of the things I say when I talk about APT is that it's in a natural bowl and it's not mic'd.
Mhm.
One of the first, and I'm like, nope, still not mic'd. But there's something about, since it is in a natural bowl,
Mhm.
the sound bounces off the trees.
Mhm.
So it's quite lovely. Like I try to explain to explain to people how magical it is on top of the hill, because it's outside.
Mhm.
There's nothing better than watching A Midsummer Night's Dream under a full moon, listening to whippoorwills. There really isn't, right?
Yeah.
And if you're lucky on a Friday night and the sound is perfect, you can hear the River Valley High School marching band playing at halftime, right? So it's like, it's perfect. It's absolute perfection. And then, of course, in September, it's a nightmare because it'll be 90 degrees in the day, right?
Yeah.
And 32 degrees at night.
Yep.
And people are like, no, there's no way that it's the temperature will change that much. Like we had a mosquito bite contest one night when Randy was doing Lear, and that's when Valerie Lansgeffro was playing Cordelia, right? And people were already dying. I think everybody had at least five layers of DEET, plus, we're hosiery, et cetera, didn't matter. I came in second that night, and I had, I think, between 105 and 110 bites on me.
Oh, ouch.
So it's not just speaking without mics. You got to deal with bats flying at your head. You got to deal with raccoons cruising across a skunk walking across the stage.
Yep.
Right, for no reason whatsoever, right? And enjoying the moment while darn well the audience is watching the skunk to see what happens next, so you might as well watch it too.
Oh,
you got to kind of make it part of the evening, because if you can't ignore it, it's there.
You can't ignore it.
And you do get, some evenings are just picture perfect, but then we do have rainouts, and we have, as you said, we have dealing with the elements. But at its best, when we're on top of it, we let them in, they become part of the evening. So if the wind in the trees is too loud, the characters stop and look up at the trees, and then they keep on talking. And so it's kind of a dance with the elements. And sometimes the elements win. But sorry, one more, Randy. Can't help it. We were, again, Lear, and it was a tornado warning, and like the audience by then was like, I don't know, 40 or 50 strong, sitting under tarps, and they didn't move. We're like, it's a tornado warning. That means you need to leave. Nope. Right. And of course, and we all know the line, blow winds and crack it. I'm telling you, I just gave myself goosebumps. It was like there was a lightning show happening behind him, and you'd think he had just summoned the gods. It was magic. It was a perfect piece of theater. And I just realized that I really need to go back home. Yeah, we have a crazy audience. They won't leave sometimes. For rain calls, sometimes the general rule of thumb is if the audience starts getting restless and leaving, we stop the show. But just put their
they won't go anywhere.
And we're like, go home for God's
sake. Right? And you're like, crap, I wanted to be home in time for nope. Because they're just hunkered down. Like they
September it gets cold, and they're like Packers fans, and we call it the sound of mittens clapping.
Right.
They're all with their mittens and their hats, and they're crazy.
Let's see if I can reciprocate.
They're wonderful. Yeah.
It sounds very funny when there's 1,000 people doing that.
Yeah.
Under blankets, because they have to pull their arms out from under the blankets first. So yeah. All right. So thank you very much, Mr.
Thank you. I'm so pleased that you are doing a reading of this, and I just wish you the best with it. So thank you so much. I'm honored that you guys chose the play. So thank you for that. Yeah. It'll
be fun to see what people think of it. Mm-hmm. I'm excited.
Me too.
So, an Improbable Fiction by our playwright of the hour, Mr. Jim DeVita. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our director, Ms. Robin Walsh. Thank you very much. So everybody stay safe. For now, Sharon McCune, the associate producer and curator of our inaugural season of Expand the Canon series, signing off. Thanks very much. Keep safe. Take care.